Welcome back to another episode of the Elevated Life Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ashley.
And I am your host as well, Evette.
We are so excited. We are live and in person and living up. And as you can see, we have a esteemed guest with us today. Yes. We have Thamarr Griffith here with us, and she is going to share some of her thoughts of circumventing the obstacles and, navigating the no's and really making success your own. So I can't wait to dive into this topic today and really understand some of the gems that you have to share with us, Thamarr. You've had a beautiful career journey, beautiful family. Yes. I'm so thankful for your time today to spend some time with us and really talk about this topic. I really appreciate it.
Sure, no problem. Thank you. Yes. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the time, and hopefully I can share some information and knowledge, and perhaps somebody will take advantage of some of the gems that I may be able to share today.
Absolutely. So I'm going to jump right into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What I know about you to be a executive, and specifically the C-suite, CEO specifically. So was this always on your vision board? Was it something that you aspired to do? Did it, fall in your lap, as they say? Tell us how you became a Black female executive, chief executive officer.
I always say this, and most people say it's not just him, but I always say God, right? First and foremost.
Yes, good.
I wasn't looking for it. No, it wasn't on my vision board. It was just something that absolutely fell in my lap.
Wow.
In fact, I didn't even apply for the role.
Wow.
Someone had reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, would you like to hear about a company?" And I'm like, "Okay."
Wow.
And then I agreed, and then it precipitated into a full-time role as a CEO of a medical device company.
Wow. Amazing. When is your time? It's your time.
It's your time.
Absolutely.
You just have to trust and believe. And also on the journey, even though I wouldn't say it was a journey because I was striving for it.
Mm-hmm.
But you are met with a lot of no's.
Yeah.
And whether it's just it's someone who's looking for a date and you want to date someone, you get a yes, or you're applying for college and you're trying to, find the career path or the school that you're looking for, or simply you're trying to get a promotion at a job, and you get no's, you get rejection, and how do you overcome that? And so for me, one of the key things that I always had in my heart was, your no is not my no.
Yeah.
And so because you tell me no doesn't mean that I have to accept the no. And if I do have no choice and I can't, change your perspective of me or your decision, that doesn't mean I have to accept no as my final answer, so that I can continue elsewhere and find someone else who will tell me yes.
Wow, I love that. You almost turn it into motivation and really a confirmation that, keep going.
Yes.
Because so many times we can take a no as, it's not meant for me. Or it can be so deflating and so distracting from the path that you're on. But to turn that into motivation and say, it's a no for you. Yeah. But it's not a no for me. I know that I need to keep going.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And it doesn't mean that you can't understand why the no came about, right? There are reasons for the no. It could be something that you needed to do differently, and then you can adjust and find that yes. Or it could be no, you're not the right person for them, but you're definitely right for someone, and that someone or that company is right for you.
Yeah.
So for me, rejection is not a bad thing.
Absolutely.
That's so good. I've looked back on some of those no's in my life, and I think we oftentimes take for granted the value of some of those no's because either it wasn't the right place, wasn't the right time, wasn't the right person, wasn't the right position,
or the right company,
and in the moment it doesn't feel very good, right? No. But when you look back on it, and especially when you've overcome those no's, like you said, you really start to see some of that value. So that's good.
Absolutely.
But then when you get to the yes, That is thrilling. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Sometimes it could be scary. Sometimes imposter syndrome may come in.
Oh, come on, we're talking our language now. We're talking our language. But tell me a little bit about that. I would love to know, like, in your experience, and then, always, I think we always have to be conscious of imposter syndrome, and like, you get those moments where like, wow, this is my life. This is what I prayed for. This is what I believe God for, and now it's here. Did you experience any moments of imposter syndrome, or like, is that something that you put to bed so long ago that it doesn't even, come up? Like, what would you say to someone that may see themselves in the C-suite, but struggle with, there's no one there that looks like me. All the peers around me, have different values, have different educational backgrounds, have different, career paths. I'm me, because we all have to show up as who we are, and who we are uniquely is generally why we're chosen. But sometimes you get caught in, the challenge of accepting who you are and really, loving who you are and going forward with that in certain situations because you're basing it on what you see in the room. What would you offer to someone that's wondering, how can I make it when there's nobody in the room that looks like me? How can I get through it when there is no one that I can scan the room and say, okay, that's a safe person to talk to? You're figuring it out. What would you say to that?
First of all, your no is not my no. And second of all, everyone is a safe space to talk to.
Oh,
you allow yourself to believe that you're safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if someone else makes you feel as though it's unsafe, you help them understand why they need to make you feel safe.
Yeah, wow.
Or they don't need, you need to make me feel safe.
Yes.
It's a matter of whatever they're giving,
empowering.
right?
Yes.
Whatever the energy they're giving off, it could be their own fear.
Mm-hmm.
But their fear doesn't have anything to do with me.
Oh, yes.
Gotta own that.
I feel that. Like all over. Yes, I feel that. I never thought about it like that, though. Like, not taking on the fact that it's not safe, but letting them know, like, you need to change this. Like, be more conscious, be more aware that there's something going on with you, because I'm fine.
And I'm not saying that, I'm perfect, but at the same time, I'm happy to break the ice.
Yeah, exactly.
If there's some kind of energy that doesn't feel good, I will go right in and I'd like to understand what it is, and not like confrontation.
No, but I think
go in, talk to the person, smile, say a joke. I like your shoes. I like your hair. That's a great jacket.
Disarm the person.
You disarm the person, because at the end of the day, everyone wants the same thing. We all want the same thing.
Absolutely.
Life, happiness, joy, good health.
Absolutely.
So,
those are fantastic points. What are some of the challenges that you face
let's see,
as a CEO, or just in general that you like to share throughout your?
I would say just throughout my career, I would say it's a blessing and a curse. I am able to see the end much sooner than anyone else. Like quickly, super.
Vision.
I mean, I can see. So if there's a strategy, and we're in the boardroom, and there's a question or consideration, I can just look at it with the blink of an eye, and I understand all the barriers, the obstacles, the risks, and why we shouldn't do something or why we should, and how to get to the end result. And while that's a blessing, it's also a curse, because I'm there already very fast, within seconds, and I have to bring a whole journey of a whole
organization
of people to then understand what I'm saying. And sometimes the experiences that I have had over the years lend to my ability to get to that point so quickly, whereas someone else who may not have had those experiences won't have any idea what I'm trying to explain. So then it's like taking the time to break it down to digestible chunks, some of which they may understand, some of them they never will comprehend, but they have to generate that trust to be able to take that journey with me.
Wow.
And so sometimes that can be challenging.
Yeah.
And challenging not because it's getting them on the journey, it's challenging because sometimes you want to go fast.
Yeah.
So
because you can already see it.
Right.
You know what it will be like in the ideal state.
Right.
So it's hard to temper that excitement, I would imagine, because you can see it.
Because it's like, okay, so we're gonna go through the process or the motion, but I already see where this is going, and having to manage your team or an organization through that, I imagine that there's probably a bit of, this might be a strong word, but a bit of like, that can feel lonely at times.
Oh,
when you can see
lonely.
something.
Yes.
And I think that's probably part of your gifting. You know what I mean?
Right.
And as you said, a blessing and a curse, but it's part of your, one of your strengths that's brought you probably to where, to your career, where you're at.
Yeah.
And so I could imagine that, when you're sitting around the room and you're like, okay, don't nobody else see how this gonna go.
Right.
Just move this part out the way.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Like I said, you have to slow down. Sometimes one of the things I would say would have been a learning lesson is just continuing down the path. Like, okay, let's keep moving so we don't lose the time. We have an opportunity. We can launch something at this point, or we can do this. And then you're struggling to get everyone on board. And then you have to stop and then go right back to the drawing board and start from the beginning because they just couldn't capture what was happening.
Yeah.
And so that's something I've learned and will not allow that to happen again. But at the end of the day, it's fun, it's thrilling, it's hard, it's incredibly hard. It is incredibly lonely. So trying to find a team of people who, or team, friend, a tribe, as some of my friends will call it, who you can have on those tough days, you can call and say, hey, I think this one's a hard one. Or sometimes you have to make decisions that no CEO ever wants to make, especially when it's regarding people. And it hurts, but you can't show that, you know. And you have to make decisions that you don't want to make, unpopular decisions.
Wow.
And then you just have to manage that.
Yeah.
And you in front of everyone, you're strong, but then you go home and it's like, man, that was a tough day.
Yeah, it stinks. Yeah.
I think that lends itself to a really good question that we have kind of related to that, which is, with the pressure of the role and responsibility, what do you do to fill your cup?
Oh, man, pray. I pray. I read the Bible. And I know I keep saying this. You're not supposed to talk about this. The truth. I'm not going to say it. And I have to get it. And whoever's right, whatever they believe, that's okay. Believe what you want, but whatever. This is what works for me. And sometimes I wake up and it may be one of those tough mornings and write a little journal, and then I start. It somehow every time I open it up, I open up the Bible, it leads me to a verse that is so apropos for the time or the occasion.
Right on time.
And sometimes it's God smacking me in the head. Bet you thought this, but let me show you.
Let me know who you were quick. Let me remind you.
Right. Let me help you understand how you are thinking about this incorrectly. Or in this example here in the Bible, this is what you're experiencing now, or this is a course correction. And so sometimes it doesn't feel good, and sometimes it's like, okay, I'm embracing and I'm ready for this challenge that I have to experience today, which is not always easy. It's not always easy. And so one of the things I would often say is, everybody wants to, get to some certain level or but the higher you go, the more pressure and challenging it is. And it's extremely lonely.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you want to call your friend and you want to call, and they may not think they can empathize, but they may not know exactly
what they're
right.
Exactly.
Or sometimes you have a challenge that you're facing and you're looking at it from an executive point of view, and the risks to the shareholders and people who are investing in the company. And then you may want to talk to a friend who thinks it's private. Of course, it's not proprietary information being shared, but then they share it in a point of view from an employee's perspective.
Yeah.
And it's like there's such a big chasm.
Between the two.
Right. It's such a big chasm. And I'm like, okay, this isn't going to work. I just need to really work with some other people who are in similar type roles. And I found the group, and that's
awesome. That's awesome. And to know that you have some people that are in a similar experience, because, I completely agree that you have to read the room, sometimes. And, even though you want that person, you trust them, but they just can't, connect with you on that. So, you then find the things that you can connect with them on. Like, well, let's still talk about the shows we watch, the wine that we're drinking this week, or whatever it is that we're enjoying together in that part of our friendship. But having, I think, different groups that you can connect with definitely is something that I find valuable. You know,
I definitely have different groups, and
Yeah.
you know, I think there are people who I've met and people who I've heard even say, these people are not on my level. And to me, that is the worst thing that I could ever hear, because I'm like, everyone is on.
absolutely.
We're all on the same level.
All humans.
You know, we have different experiences, but we're all
Yeah.
on the same level. And so I make sure that I keep circles of all different types of people.
That's great.
Especially people who have different political views than I have.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, in my home, we have very different political views. So me and my husband, you know,
Yeah.
we have debates at the dinner table, and my kids are saying they challenge us in ways that we don't. Sometimes I'm like, how can you believe that?
Yeah.
And they have their view, and I'm like, I can't impress upon them my view. Like, I want them to be thinking independently.
Yeah.
And so, in terms of having different types of friends or people or groups or circles, I have all different sorts of circles.
Oh, wow.
All different circles.
And that lends, I would imagine, to running an entire company, because at all levels, all different types of employees, all different types of experiences.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
That is beautiful.
What strategies have you found that really has helped to propel your success? You know, it could be a morning routine, could just be how you approach situations.
When I have seen different peers at different companies I've worked for at different levels throughout my career, I think often people wait for someone to help them to get to the next role.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's their manager or the manager's manager, and I'm like, I'm not waiting for anyone, because they may not see the value that I see in myself.
Right.
And so if I'm waiting for someone, then it may never happen.
Yeah.
And so I don't care if I have to bulldoze my way.
Yeah.
Back then, you know, and I was vocal, so I shared my opinions, but I always had a goal for myself, and I never allowed what someone else's perceptions of me hinder what my goals were for myself. So they
That's good.
and that
is.
and I think this stems back from something all the way in middle school, which is horrible. I hate to say it, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
I didn't make the softball team, and I wasn't even interested in the softball team. I went because I wanted to go, but I didn't make the team. And I'm like, how dare they tell me that I can't do something
Exactly.
in middle school? And so, from my perspective, it was like, how could someone tell me no? And so at that point, I positioned myself in different sports. I did go to school on an athletic scholarship, but it was track and field. So it was a single, you know, it's a team sport to a degree, but you are responsible for your performance. And if you win that race, the coach can't say you're not good enough, because if you failed, it was on you.
Yeah.
And then subsequently in my career, I ended up going into sales, because I'm like, I don't have to wait for someone to tell me I'm good enough. I can demonstrate my performance through my ability to outperform others by having the highest sales. And so that's what I did. I did sales, and then joined a company that was very challenging to get into, and then I became the top rep in the country. So I was number one, and then the following year I was number one again. And then I'm like, okay, guess what? You've shown yourself that you can do this. I'm bored. I need another goal. And I'm like, well, if I can do this for myself and help this company thrive, why can't I do this for other businesses? And that's why I chose to become an entrepreneur earlier on. And then I started doing it for other businesses.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And how empowering, though. I mean, that's like literally living. Like, you can't be the expert on me.
Yeah.
No one can tell you more about yourself than you. And just knowing who you are and knowing that you're going to do what it takes to get it done and get it done well. You know, I mean, there's no greater confidence, I don't think, that you can have in yourself, and like really relying on what you know, knowing who you are and relying on what you know you can do. I think that's beautiful. But of course, with the help of God and who He has created us all to be individually, but leaning on that, think about how many times we've gotten a performance review or an opinion that was unsolicited. Exactly. All sorts of thoughts that we could allow to become part of the narrative that we tell ourselves, and I need to get better at this, or I need to do better at that. I need to talk to people differently, I need to write different, and all of that, versus really relying on what your talents are and not really even focusing on some of those things that could be perceived as feedback. So I think that's beautiful. I love that. That confidence. Oh, I love it.
What I really like about that story too is it went all the way to middle school, because I do think that there are some things that are very innate in us that if we look back over our lives, we can see some of those characteristics and traits. You know, it takes a certain level of tenacity at a middle school level.
Actually, thinking back, it went back to elementary
school. I had some same idea.
I'm not 5 feet tall, right? And so because of that, you can't do this. You're too small for this. You're not tall enough for this. I wanted to be a safety patrol so badly. My mother's like, you're too small. Everybody's going to beat you up. You can't do it. I want to do karate. You're too small. They're going to beat you up. Fast forward, I'm 30-something years old, and I'm taking karate with a bunch of kids.
I know that's right.
I'm going to put some of y'all down. So given the fact that I'm not 5 feet, I'm, here sparring with 13-year-old boys, but at the end of the day, I wanted to do something, and I did it.
Absolutely.
Then I said,
and you didn't let it go.
I didn't let it go.
You didn't let it go.
And then I'm like, okay, I can't fight these little 13-year-olds.
Yeah.
They end up beating me up at number 2. It just feels weird with the parents looking. And so I was like, let me try Muay Thai, which is more aggressive, and I was the only female in the class, which, is the environment that I work in for the most part. Only female. And I'm not afraid. Punch me, even though they didn't want to punch me. But when it came time to punch them, I did not feel bad.
Like we all here for the same reason.
Exactly.
Okay.
I love it.
But it wasn't until like a couple of some good
Oh my God, that is amazing. Yes. Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. I mean, the self-work and the self-belief that you have to have is really a key thing that I'm taking away from this conversation, because it's not just about the skills and the abilities and the education, the knowledge. All of that is great, but the belief can take you so much further than any of that. I mean, that's, to me, where it's rooted. When you can see it, you believe it, and you're trusting, like you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, what can stop you? And that's, I think, so many times where we stumble. Is, we allow things to come in on the belief and the trust and the faith, and, it prevents us from getting there quicker than we can.
And like I said earlier, imposter syndrome is real. But you can't let it fester.
Deal with it.
Some days, I have a bad day. I messed up on something and it just didn't execute as well as I would have liked. And then I'm like, you can do this.
Yes, I love it.
You did this and you overcame. You did this and you overcame.
Oh, remind me of success. Oh, come on.
You did this and you overcame. Is this going to stop you now? And I'll give one more example, which is probably not a good example, but I'm saying. I remember when I was pregnant with my second child, and I had a condition that was something that I'd never heard of. They told me what it was and how the child was going to have all of these different issues, and the doctor, it was a specialty obstetrician or gynecologist, she said, you have to let us know in the next week or 2 whether you're going to want to keep this pregnancy. And I stared at her, and I looked and I'm like, keep pregnancy? And she's like, oh, you can have this, you can have this, you can have this. And my husband looked at me, I looked at him, and I was like, okay, I'll let you know. And I went home and I looked at him and I was like, we're going to have this child. The child is going to be healthy, and we just need to pray.
I love it.
And I have my child, and she came out perfectly fine. But if we would have had that doubt,
wow.
So it's like, your no is not my no. And she kept saying, like, you really need to. And I'm like, I don't care what you have to say.
I'm not subscribing to that.
But I'm just not going to appreciate. I'm not just going to. That's not my reality.
Wow. I got something about 5 minutes ago. But no,
it's so good. So I had a similar story with the second child. They were having a hard time getting a full anatomy scan of her. When they finally did, they said that she could potentially have all of these issues, and we ended up having to go see a specialist. And this makes me emotional. I'm so glad you brought it up. And it was really hard because I'm in ministry, And so having to, you pray for people and you pray over people in their situations, but it's very seldom. And for some reason, at the time, it was somewhat uncomfortable for me to ask for prayer. We ended up finally talking to our pastor about it and went to church one particular Sunday. And it was like the table had turned, where I was used to praying over people that would come to the altar and ask for prayer. It was now our family. And I very vividly remember being and pregnant, being at the front of the church, and our pastor asked all of the mothers, and whether you had biological children or whether you were a surrogate mom, to come and lay hands on us. And I remember feeling women touching my shoulders and my head and my neck and my stomach and just praying over us. And we had to go to Iowa City at the time, because that's where the specialist was, and they still could not get a full anatomy scan, so we still didn't have answers. And but we prayed and we believed that I was the same way. Like your story, you cannot tie your story, your situation to mine. That the pediatrician that came to, how they come and check on the baby, and I told her the situation. And when you hear people say suddenly that that's how God moves, she looked at her, she said, "She's fine," and that was it. And she's totally fine. And she's 11 years old now. We call her our chief operating officer, because she keeps us together and on track and on time, and she knows everybody's business and her own and all the things. And so thank you for sharing that. There's something miraculous about carrying a child and having to trust God through the outcome. Yeah. And the amazing thing about it, and the thing that God is so good, is it transfers to other parts of your life.
Yeah.
So you're sharing a story about motherhood and having a miracle in healing, but it motivates you to stand in that mirror and say, "Yes, you've been through this.
Yep. If you can,
you've been through that.
Yes,
you've been through this." And so you've gone. If God can take you from this, that, and the other, then imposter syndrome.
That is beautiful. And one point I'd like to make: people who have worked for companies who have been laid off, because I know that right now we're in a time where there's a lot of that happening. Some people who can be terminated for various different reasons that they don't believe is just. Sometimes that's just the way of God redirecting you and pivoting you to something else or better, or somewhere that just couldn't appreciate or recognize what value you had. It wasn't valuable to them, but it was way more valuable to someone else or another company or another organization. Yeah. Don't beat yourself up about that. Don't beat yourself up, because it's. I can't even express to you what it looks like at different companies today, but it can be challenging for employees during this time.
Absolutely.
And it can also be challenging for CEOs, because they're having to shepherd these people through very tumultuous times. Yeah. And so I like to pray for the people who, I'm leading. Yeah. And then pray for the people who are investing, because this is their money. Yeah. And, at the end of the day, sometimes things have to happen so that they don't lose. But at the end of the day, as long as we try to do our best every day and do the right thing, then that's all you can ask for.
Absolutely. And show up as who you are.
I am so me.
Yes.
I am unapologetically me.
Exactly. And that is the biggest gift that you can give yourself in any environment, but especially in your career, in your work environment, is really truly like knowing who you are, but showing up as who you are. Not caring, not taking any regard for what any expectation is, but really say, this is who I am, this is what I offer. Take it or leave it. I know it's the best.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Yes. Oh wow, this has been a beautiful conversation. Of course, I'm over here just keep on trying to get myself together. But thank you so much, Thamarr, for sharing your time with us today, sharing your heart with us and your experiences. It was absolutely beautiful. We really want to thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Thamarr. Is there any last parting words you want to share with the people today?
Not my no.
Not
your no. Not my no, not your no. So if you hear that no, or you hear something that doesn't feel right, you don't have to accept it. You can learn from it. You don't have to accept it, and just be able to embrace who you are and pivot. Always pivot. If you lose that ability to pivot, then where does that leave you?
Yeah.
You can't. There's no option but to succeed.
No option but to succeed.
Put that on the.
I'm telling you, that's a t-shirt. No option but to succeed.
No option but to succeed.
Yes.
So beautiful.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. And we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye.